This morning I've started listening to The Exhibitionist by Charlotte Mendelsohn, and it's darker than I imagined it would be. So far we have the tale of this artist who, it's about his entire family, and the artist is a bit of a misogynist, classically, emotionally neglectful towards his wife and children. I'm being somewhat reminded of Brian from The Archers and the way that his children revolved around him and his relationships with them when I last listened to it. Very middle class worries, which doesn't usually interest me, but the tension behind this relationship that he has with his wife, who's also supposed to have a career, and he dislikes the fact that she has this career as a top sculptor because he's supposed to be the big name, and he thinks that she would be nothing without him because he was originally her art teacher. So there's that tension there. There's the tension they have with the children. He believes that she has caused his son not to like him and has pushed his daughter away, not recognising it's his own behaviour. So far at the moment, she has just discussed cancer treatment she had and how he even managed to make that all about him, because to the outside world he's always got to be a hero, a saviour. He brought her from nothing, he helped her get her career, and everything is always her fault. These are things that you hear of, might have even experienced before. Speaking from personal experience, definitely seen this sort of behaviour before in my life, and always fills me with this tension. It's this sort of thing that I read in Ghost Wall that made me disappear from the internet for a fortnight because it just completely depressed me. The second chapter had this moment at the start where, since I'm not seeing how this is formatted on the page, I wondered whether it was poetry because it seemed incredibly poetic. I like tales of families. I didn't necessarily expect it to be like this. I didn't expect it to be so grim, but I think that Mendelssohn, the author, Charlotte Mendelsohn, if I didn't say, has done a good job so far of just showing the smaller tensions and how it feels more tense because everyone seems to be skirting the line, all of them ready to just explode at any moment. And I wonder whether this is going to be a quiet explosion upon the conclusion of the novel, or whether it is going to be a rager. So far everything is waiting upon this exhibition that's due to happen on the evening of the book, and I can't remember whether this is the one that's set over one day. I'm not sure, but so far very good, very tense, brilliant writing, and must have captured the characters quite well because I'm feeling incredibly tense with the listening of it. And as I have overtime tomorrow and will be in work when I'm not usually, I'm hoping that the journey to and from work, I'll be able to get this one finished over the next 2 days. And then I'm also reading The Island of Missing Trees by Elif Shafak. I've reached part 2 of that and will be reading some of that this evening. I'm hoping to maybe get to page 200 tonight and then finish it tomorrow. We'll see. But with any luck, those are my plans for the upcoming days. I'm also feeling particularly bad because my mum returned to work this morning for the first time in 11 months. She's been off sick the entire time. So Sally, for the most part, for the last 11 months, has always had someone at home with her, be it my parents or my younger brother. And today, I had to leave her. So I'm hoping she manages okay. There's a few weeks ago, we weren't there because my dad had to go for some sort of test at the hospital, so he was gone for a bit, and she was fine. And I know we've left her in the day before, but it's just the idea that she's actually going to be left for the majority of the day on her own. My brother should be back in about an hour and a half, but even then he's only there for 2 hours and then gone for another 4. So hopefully she's going to be okay. Oh, I didn't expect to feel such tension over a canine acquaintance, because I've had plenty of dogs in my time, many of which I've left at home whilst I've gone to work. I've been in work for nearly 9 years. But hey, this is how we are feeling this Monday morning. I think once we've done it for a bit of time, then I'll feel less anxious about leaving her on her own. But also this week I'm in work Monday, Tuesday, off Wednesday, Thursday, back in Friday, Saturday, and that could change depending on who's in. We all know that I am an outfit repeater by now. My goodness, the hair, well, I don't know what's happened to it today, but it's like this, and we're gonna have to cope with it. So it's Tuesday. I'm in work. Don't usually work on a Tuesday. Well, key call, I do work. I hope so. I have listened to 15 chapters of The Exhibitionist by Charlotte Mendelssohn. And yesterday, me and Charlie were discussing this, or Charlie and I were discussing this, and we were enjoying it. Well, enjoy is the wrong word, but we were liking it. We appreciated the tension. I was seeing things within the prose that I thought could be somewhat metaphorical or allegorical, and then the journey to home happened. And on my journey home, I found myself getting more and more bored by this tale. I believe this is definitely the book that takes place over the one day, although it does flashback to past events. And my biggest issue so far with this book is the fact, well, there's a few things, but the biggest one is that every single character has a secret, but whenever we have chapters from a certain character's perspective, we are always in their head. So the secrets should have been revealed to us, but instead the writer is choosing to drip feed them to us. However, that doesn't work because we're very close to what's going on inside the character's mind. We're being told what they think, what they feel, what certain actions signify. And because of that, it doesn't feel natural. It feels very much like the author is entering into the narrative here and saying, I want to continue this little bit of tension throughout the entire narrative. Every single character within this family is toxic and terrible, with the exception of maybe Patrick, but we don't know what's going on with him yet. I still think that it's a well-drawn family of people who have been very abusive to one another, or these children had to deal with the very toxic, tumultuous relationship of having artistic parents and parents who have this very tumultuous relationship, where, as we've got further on into the narrative, whilst we're shown that Ray has definitely been an abusive, misogynistic, stereotypical man in terms of his behaviours, and when I go with stereotypical, I'm thinking stereotypical like 1950s attitudes, you're seeing that Lucia has displayed some behaviours that haven't been the nicest, although I still disagree with the fact that Ray, when she was dealing with her breast cancer, still turned it into being about him. I'd still say he's worse. I don't think he's good. There is not a single redeeming quality about him. I understand that they're talking about some illness he might have had, but to me, it does not condone his actions. So for me, the tension has kind of diminished somewhat because I've reached this point where I almost don't necessarily care. I said that I was reminded somewhat of Rachel Cusk with second place last year, but also with, what was it, the one I read? Was it This Country Life last year? Or even Arlington Park, because Arlington Park takes place over one day. So let's go with Arlington Park. It's somewhat reminiscent of a Cusk in the way that we are very much inside the characters' minds, and can be very long-winded and verbose in terms of the language, which I didn't mind in the beginning, but as we do get closer towards the middle of the narrative, I do feel like we could do with it being a bit more propulsive in its storytelling. However, I can't spoil it, but a revelation about Lucia and what she has done, I welcomed it, and I thought very much good on you. I do think that there is, again, something of the metaphor within this. I do wonder whether Mendelssohn is drawing parallels between Virginia Woolf and her husband, or Vita Sackville West, and whoever that bloke was, whose name I can't remember. Was it Vita Sackville West? Or was it somebody else? Do you know, there have been too many artists having too many affairs in the last 100 years for me to properly remember which one this reminded me of, but it reminded me of one of them. It could have even been Colette. I'd have to speak to Sarah about Hardcover Hearts because I'm pretty confident she'd know what I'm thinking about. Anyway, I'm wondering whether this book might have been inspired by the tales of artists in the past who have been a bit unscrupulous. I also did read the next part of The Island of Missing Trees by Elif Shafak. This is another book that I'm finding verbose, and I'm struggling to figure out how all of the time periods jigsaw together because they seem to be a bit conflicted at the moment, but I'm sure that as we move on we're going to properly understand it. I'm reminded somewhat in tone, obviously, of her previous book, and she does seem to like discussing these themes of being outcast by family, or how tradition often can be an imposition on family life, and a certain type, how xenophobia between two countries can also cause division within the family. It's almost like here we have a modern take on a Romeo and Juliet West Side Story, Tristan Isolde classic type tale. So we'll see how this goes. I am intrigued by what's going on with Ada, and I wonder how that's going to turn out. It seems like a very different take on grief with certain family members here, and I don't know. I wondered when this girl stood up in her classroom and suddenly started screaming whether this was meant to be similar to the Celtic Banshee or the Greek Siren. So whether it was supposed to be something significant in terms of that, or whether it's just an outpouring of grief that she's felt she hasn't been able to share before. I don't know, but I plan to read 2 parts tonight because the next one's rather short. Get to page 240 tonight and then finish it tomorrow, at which point I hope to also finish the Charlotte Mendelssohn and also do a fair bit of reading of the Books of Jacob by Olga Tokarczuk, which I'm reading for another video, which I think I'll just disappear and chat about now. No, I won't. What's the point in talking when I haven't read out for it? Gosh darn it. But these are the plans. Dog update. Got home last night to be told by my younger brother that when he and my dad had arrived home, she'd been in bed. So usually she gets in my bed about 5 o'clock in the morning, has an hour or so with me. Fine. Yesterday, I thought, well, I'll just leave her here because it's a bit, it's going to be a difficult day. Well, she didn't get out of bed. She came downstairs whenever they came home, because they came home, then went back up the field. And she came down to check, and if it wasn't me, she ran back upstairs. She just got into my bed. So I don't know whether she's depressed or whether she's just lazy. But she did try and outwit me this morning by coming downstairs as I was about to leave and give me that sad face that all dogs are known for, as in, I can't believe you're leaving me again. And even though I don't live here, sometimes it feels like I do, even though I work in a dog-friendly shop, I do not think that that little dog could come and be scrambling around here all day, especially if she did see me fussing another dog, in which case there would probably be some sort of vicious attack. Well, she's not vicious, she's tiny, but you know what I mean. She gets very jealous very easily. Small dogs do. Anyway, I think that's it for today, and hopefully next time I speak to thee, I will have finished the Shafak and I'll finish this book, and we can chat about them more. I'll definitely be chatting with Charlie about them anyway, so yeah. I decided that this morning I would dedicate to finishing The Exhibitionist by Charlotte Mendelssohn, and I'm not a fan of this book. In my estimations, when I chose to read the long list alongside Charlie Brooke, I already had an idea as to how to rank these, because I didn't like Sorrow and Bliss last year and I really enjoyed The Sentence by Louise Erdrich. And so they were kind of my baselines. And up until this morning, whilst I did not think that The Exhibitionist was the best book in the world, it was above Sorrow and Bliss. And then I got to the end of this book. And maybe it's because I like something traditional in terms of storytelling. Maybe it's because I appreciate some sort of change in character or tone. But that doesn't happen here. Nothing changes. The characters remain the same. And although the reader gets a glimpse of what the world really believes of this misogynist, this abuser, this right unutterable bastard that is the character of Ray, there's just nothing. The story remains on one tone throughout, and despite something tumultuous happening towards the end, it kept the same general tone, that these actions that were happening within this scene, well, there was an air of unbelievability about them, and we were getting to see the grotesquerie and the monstrousness of the character of Ray, and Charlotte Mendelssohn does love a metaphor and an allegory, and it's one of those where I appreciate the prose, and for the most part I thought that this was really good, almost poetic prose. This was really, it was written well for the most part, but even good writing could not save this book, in my opinion. I did not end up caring. Well, no, I clearly cared. That's the thing. I clearly cared about where the story was going to go enough to finish the book. But I had hoped for something more than what we got. It very much felt like nothing happened, and nothing happened, and continuously nothing happened. And we got this very passive voice throughout, this very telling of tales type tone, where this is what happened in the past, and this is what happened in the past, and it became repetitive. And it never felt like we were actually engaging in what was happening within the tale now. Everyone was keeping secrets, but as I said yesterday, this didn't really make sense because we spent so much time within their heads that it didn't make sense to keep these secrets from the reader. There is a sense of dramatic irony towards the end of the book that I could appreciate. Charlotte Mendelssohn clearly has a sense of humour, but this one didn't work for me. This, for me, was a bit like a similar reading experience I had with Vacant Possession by Mantel last year, in that I'd really liked Every Day is Mother's Day, and I was aware that she could write dark, toxic situations and pull some humour into that. But whilst Mendelssohn has humour, whilst she has clearly crafted this tale in more of a realistic stance, there were moments where it was no longer realistic, where it, to use the phrase jump the shark, it went a bit too far and nothing happened to really show any idea as to why these characters remained in the situation they were in, but as a tale of abuse and neglect and the way that abuse can affect children, then I suppose that well, it worked well. I've seen situations like this before. I know that these things happen, but it just got my back up, and I need more when it comes to my fiction. So yeah, this one now currently sits at the bottom of my estimations, which means that, you know, hopefully we've only got up. The only way is up. I'm going to finish The Island of Missing Trees today as well, and then the audiobook I'll start listening to is the final revival of Opal and Nev, but I really mean continuing that. And I think to catch up with Charlie and what she's reading, I'm going to Careless or Flamingo next. Both of which have really big fonts. I have to try and get through the library books before I get through anything else, because with them being on the Women's Prize, I feel like everybody's going to want them. So I currently have 2 weeks to get through these, so these are going to make up all of my reading for next week, which you have to look forward to. I'll have to make this clip a bit quick because Sally has just returned from her brief sojourn around the garden and she'll be wondering where I am. She might even come scratching at the door. Let's give it a second. She's here. One moment, please. This is where I'm sitting. You can talk about the book if you like. Sally is here. There we go. Yesterday after I'd spoken to you, Sally and I went for a walk. Originally, I was planning on going up to the forest and doing not the proper long walk that's an hour and a half, but going up a certain path and just making the walk around the reservoir a bit longer. It's probably just as long as if I did do the longest walk, but I just wanted something a bit different yesterday. Anyway, I saw these rain clouds coming in and I thought, you know what? We won't do that, will we? No, we won't do that. What we will do is just the towpath. Don't take too long and hopefully we'll avoid this rain cloud. Well, first footstep onto the towpath and it started just lightly spraying with rain, but it soon became torrential, didn't it? And I kept walking. Sally wasn't too happy about it. Indeed, she kept stopping to shake, but nothing was working. And we got so far, it was getting muddier and slippier. And I just thought, this ain't good for either of us. Let's go back. So we did, and we returned to the car, having done about half of our usual walk. So, dried Sally off. I proceeded to finish reading The Island of Missing Trees by Elif Shafak, had a bath, and spoke some Italian. But let's talk about this. So, The Island of Missing Trees is a lot of different stories, really. So we are getting the tale of this island, which I believe we're in Cyprus, aren't we? Yes. So in the blurb, it says, it is 1974 on the island of Cyprus, and two teenagers from opposite sides of a divided land meet at a tavern in the city they both call home. However, that's not where this book starts. This book starts with the character of Ada, really, which is the daughter of these two star-crossed lovers, to pull a nice little cliched phrase out of the air. And Daphne, her mother, has died. Ada is dealing with the grief of this and all of the other teenage emotions that arise. And one day, something happens in her classroom that sees her father called to the school just as they're about to embark upon a Christmas break. Her father is dealing with his grief, but is also burying a fig tree because it's winter. And this fig tree is one of the narrators of this tale. Throughout this tale, you get the exploration of grief between this father and his daughter. You get to see what brought them to England in the first place and the struggles they had with escaping from their past. In terms of the fig tree, whenever it started talking about anything to do with trees and that sort of thing, I immediately thought of Lab Girl by Yaren, which is a book I still haven't finished, but I will do one day. I have 200 pages left to read, and I've had about 200 pages left to read for a few months now. I will say with this book, it felt as though the story didn't properly get going until about 100 pages in, and I didn't really feel invested until the 200 page mark. When I got to the 200, well, no, it won't have been 200 pages. It will have been whichever part came just before page 200. So maybe about page 190, around that mark, I was like, do you know what? I'm a bit invested here. I want to see how things work out for these characters. There's a bit of dramatic irony at the beginning when it talks about two bodies in a well, and then you're meeting people throughout the tale and questioning who these two bodies in the well are going to be. As with Shafak's previous book, the writing is superb and evocative and just really helps to create Cyprus and discuss the political tumult of the time, how this separated families or caused separations and rifts within families, but also within the people who all inhabit the same island. It discussed how this fracture might have affected Ada herself and how history is not something that gets left in the past when it's a history of trauma. It's something that the parents, no matter how hard they try not to allow their children to inherit this pain and this anguish, they're still going to inherit some pain and anguish because they feel as though something's been kept from them. I think that it was a different portrayal of grief than I have seen in the past, and I appreciate that. As we know, I have something within me that rather appreciates tales of grief, and I think that this was done well. I think that in terms of the characters, I cared about them, but I don't know whether I properly saw them. It's difficult because with Costas, Ada's father, we went into the past and we got to see who he was as a young man before he became the person that he is. The same with Daphne, although we don't really see Daphne in the modern day due to the fact that she's dead. But with Ada, you only really know her from her grief. Yes, this is true. Hello? You're kind of in my spotlight right now. Yeah. Yeah, this is all being recorded. Yeah, so just, yeah, thank you. So, with Ada, all we could see with Ada was this teenager. I mean, when it said she was a bit like Daphne, so I suppose we could guess that Ada took after her mother, and that's kind of it. I enjoyed this book. I thought that it was very well crafted. Yeah, well crafted and well done. It seems to fit in with the themes and types of story that I think Shafak wants to tell at the moment, considering 10 minutes 38 seconds in this strange world. I, again, really liked the narratorial voice of the fig tree and the moments when that character would get to speak, because there was something mystical within those words that spoke to me as a reader and as a writer, and discussed things that I like to see discussed. I liked how we incorporated myth and legend from across the world in these discussions about trees, and it really did make me want to go and explore the Lab Girl book or some other books I've seen about trees recently. I don't know whether it's all right that my favourite parts of this were the parts narrated by the tree, and I very much appreciated getting to hear the story of a place that I did not know the history of. It was it's a classic tale, really, you know. I kept saying this, didn't I? Romeo and Juliet, Tristan and Isolde, that sort of thing, of two people from opposing factions falling in love with one another, and the repercussions of that. I don't know, it's not necessarily one that I would reread. I'm happy to have read it, and I'm happy to and it didn't feel like a waste of time. But I can't say, like, if I was ranking these books at the moment, this book would still come beneath The Sentence. The Sentence is the one that I am holding to the most esteem right now, and so it currently goes The Sentence, The Island of Missing Trees, Sorrow and Bliss, and then The Exhibitionist. So this week has actually been good. We've had my worst book and the book that I would call the second best. You know, if I was to compare this against The Exhibitionist on its own, this is like miles above that. Technically, it does do a lot of the things that I like to see done in fiction, you know, discussions of grief, mysticism, learning about a place that I didn't previously know about, weird narrators that are somewhat reminiscent of Blackberry Wine by Joanne Harris, which also helps to discuss a tumultuous time. It'd be worth your time to give it a read if you get the opportunity, is all I'm saying. I've got a pot of coffee downstairs, and, well, this dog wants attention, so I'll probably see thee tomorrow. I don't know. I don't know when this vlog's ended, because I don't know what more I'm going to read, but there you go. Well, it's later on in the day, and I just got back from the library. If you didn't know, because I'm trying to be really mean to myself, I've decided I'm going to try and read the entire Women's Prize for Fiction long list, and as many books off the International Book long list as is possible before they announce the winner. So, just stay there for 1 second, please. I've reserved books from the library. Yeah, Bark. And a few had come in today. The first being More Than I Love My Life by David Grossman, and immediately this gets me because it says winner of the International Man Booker. I didn't pay attention to the fact it's underneath the author's name. No, I didn't do that. What did I do? I immediately start suspecting that something's gone awry, that I've actually gone and got a book from previous years. Have I been getting books off the right long list? Because I've been hearing about these books for a while. There's every chance that they haven't been out. They've been out a lot longer than I thought, and I've not been going off the right long list. Well, I send a message to Kieran of KD Books. Feel bad about that. And I messaged my friend Charlie. I'm like,
have I gone off the wrong long list? Well, I haven't. This is on there, and basically David Grossman apparently won it back in 2018 for Horse Walks into a Bar, and do you know something? I've got that on my Kindle, because that was the year, I think, that they put out all of the International Book and NetGalley editions you could download and read along, and I still haven't done it. So what's this one about? Israel, 2008. 90th birthday of someone called Vera, and festivities are interrupted by her daughter who she rejected. Oof. Oof. More Than I Love My Life is a sweeping story about the power of love and loving with courage. A novel driven by faith in humanity even in our darkest moments. It asks us to confront our deepest held beliefs about a woman's duty to herself and her children. Now, this is what I remember about this book. Prior to the announcement of the long list, I was looking at translated fiction and I saw this on Waterstone's website and didn't get it. And then it showed up. Either way, it seems to be one of the shorter books on the long list at 300 pages. And I'm still making my way through the books of Jacob. I nearly said the walls of Jericho. That's something else entirely. Anyway, this was translated by Jessica Cohen, who also shared the 2017 Man Booker International Prize with David Grossman for her translation of A Horse Walks into a Bar. Well, now that I've made a complete fool of myself to Kieran and Charlie, can we put it down to me brain not working as well as it used to? Can we do that? Is that a thing? Is that allowed? Because I could really use that right now. And then I got Heaven by Mieko Kawakami, and this one was translated by Sam Bett and David Boyd. Now, Breasts and Eggs is the famous one from this one, isn't it? That I've still not read. So what do we have here? Apparently Mieko Kawakami is a literary sensation. This book is about the impact of violence and the power of solidarity. A 14-year-old boy is subjected to relentless torment for having a lazy eye, only understood by his classmate Kojima. She's also being bullied. Apparently it's short and it's good, and they've used the same font that they used in The Lost Daughter by Ferranti, if that's out to go by. Now, this next book is the book that I really wanted from the library. I wanted it ever since I first heard that it existed, which was when they announced the long list for the Women's Prize for Fiction. And it's Build Your House Around My Body by Violet Coopersmith. Now, I was told that this book was at the library waiting for me, but it wasn't there when I got there. And I'm thinking, oof, something's awry here. Well, I'm at the library for a few hours for the writers group, so I'll wait to check again when I get down the stairs, and would you know, there it is. Alongside some military history about World War One. I didn't want that. Not being funny, like World War One and World War Two are huge topics to discuss. And as I mentioned to Simon of Savage Reads in his video yesterday when he was talking about violence and how that was a World War Two book, I learnt so much about the World Wars when I was at high school because it seemed to be on every single year. Sorry, I had to move the dog then. She was getting a bit too cumbersome. I didn't really have an interest, so I took it up to the counter and say, I know that I ordered this book, but I certainly didn't order this one. And the only reason I took it to the counter was because they were trying to charge me £1 for reserving it when I'd never even seen the book or heard about it in my life. In fact, one part of me wondered whether I'd meant to order something from the International Booker and this was just the incorrect title. You know, same title, different book. Anyway, turns out she just made a mistake. Well, she hadn't made a mistake. The library had made a mistake. Probably broke some, not international laws. See, this is you confusing me now. Probably broke some data protection laws. Broke? Oh God, we've gone northern. Anyway, two young Vietnamese women go missing decades apart. Both are fearless, both are lost, and both will have their revenge. All right then. Apparently there's some magic in that as well, Sally. Yeah, apparently. We're not going to read it tonight though, are we? No, not that one. We've got other stuff to read tonight. Yeah? Yeah. You probably won't read them. No. You'll probably just sit there and chaperone, yeah? Yeah. All right then. That's me. I just came on to show you these books and talk nonsense about nonsense, yeah. Yeah, that seems to be it. Nonsense. Ta-ra. So, on the way into work today, I listened to some more of the final revival of Opal and Nev, and it's just got interesting. At the end of chapter 9, it has just got interesting. I think had I been reading this, I probably would have finished it by now, simply because of the format in which it's told. It seems like a very fast read. Instead, I'm listening to the audiobook, and the audiobook is done in a fascinating way in that each different character has a different voice, and they're all doing a very good job. I suppose it listens, the way that it's written now is more like a radio documentary or a podcast than like an audiobook. And maybe that's how this was written. I mean, if we think about it really, I have a big thing about storytelling, and I really like the way things sound, so I should care more about this as a version of different storytelling. And maybe that's the thing. Maybe I appreciate the form, but I don't like how it's being utilised here. I don't know. But there's something about the tale that often I feel like, oh, I could DNF this. I don't think it's for me. But it's a different way of storytelling again. So whereas I'm used to having learned all the information in the beginning and know who these characters are before we move on, this book, again, it's a bit like a jigsaw where you'll be given flashes of information. Despite the fact that there's a linear storyline, the information that we're given is given to us piecemeal. Oh, Opal liked this, Nev liked this happened to Nev in this year, but we're actually, everything's happening in retrospective, so you can't be sure of anything either because of the conflicting testimonies from these people. So I suppose that I'll just have to almost lay back and just accept what's going on in this book, despite the fact that sometimes I can think that it's not for me. We'll see. Because I do like the way that the audiobook's done and the differentiation between the voices, the cast that's come together for this. Maybe it's a book that'll leave me conflicted till the end. At least it's making me think. Anyway, alongside that, I think that I might be trying to read Careless next, but I don't know because I've got this one, Sky Day, and that does sound like it appeals to me. And Charlie says that I need to keep an eye out at Flamingo because of her thoughts on the first few pages, so I might give them a read tonight to give her my feedback on them, but then read something else. I did start reading a book on my Kindle that is nothing to do with the Women's Prize. So if I read that, I just won't mention it in this vlog. Or I might do. We'll see. But that's it from me today. I get that from me old drama teacher who used to say to roll up your sleeves so you weren't constantly messing with them. Only thing is, I do feel like it makes me a bit more expressive with my hands then. Anyway, I come here today to draw a line under this video. I started doing that on Thursday, but ended up wanting to discuss more. I thought
that I would be finishing the final revival of Opal and Nev today. I thought that I would have read more of Careless by Kirsty Capes and be finishing both those books. However, Thursday I focused on the books of Jacob, and I started listening to the final revival of Opal and Nev again on the way into work on Friday. And I finished it at chapter 9, and I couldn't find the wherewithal to continue on the ride home, so I didn't. And then my headphones, I needed to charge them. I didn't know I needed to charge them, so I didn't have them with me yesterday. And I talked about this in my wool gathering video. I don't know whether the final revival of Opal and Nev is a book that I would navigate towards. Whilst I appreciate and enjoy the way that the audiobook is narrated, and I like the experimentation, it's not really experimentation taking place with the narratorial voice. I like the different style of all these voices coming together to help jigsaw together a story, and I appreciate that. Charlie has now given me spoilers about where this book is going in efforts to try and spur me on to listen to the book, but I think that with that one, it's a book that I'm not going to finish for now. However, should it make it to the long list, then I will listen to the book. Not the shortlist, not the long list, the shortlist. Should this book make it to the shortlist, then I will listen to it, because I didn't like The Exhibitionist, but I preferred that to the final revival of Opal. But I prefer the final revival of Opal and Nev to The Exhibitionist. It's just that I don't want to bookend my week with books that I am going to feel negatively towards. So I think that forgetting everything, I'm either going to go towards Build Your House Around My Body by Violet Coopersmith, or This One Sky Day by Leonie Ross next. I'm feeling like I want to read something that has some magical aspect to it, and Charlie says that both of these books are weird and that she thinks they'll be to my tastes, so I'm going to go with these ones. I'm also going to shove a book out of the International Booker into my reading this week because it seems short, and that's Heaven by Mieko Kawakami, and this is translated by Sam Bett and David Boyd. So this is going to get read at some point this week as it's rather short. I am currently reading another book that I got in for review because I decided to step away from the Women's Prize books just for a bit because they weren't necessarily... I was feeling, not necessarily in a slump, my mother's just arrived home, I wasn't necessarily feeling like I was in a reading slump, but I felt like I just wanted a break from prize reading and focus on some of the books that I wanted to get done. So that's that really. In terms of, in the grand scheme of things with the Women's Prize, I've now read 4 of the books and DNF'd 1, which I think means I have 11 left to read. What have we got here? Oh, we've got 3 here. Charlie's told me to put off reading Flamingo, but as this is due back in the library, I might have to read it anyway. She hasn't liked this. I've read the first few pages, and I think that the writer is being a bit manipulative with the prose. You aren't allowed to see Daniel, the protagonist, as anything other than sad, and apparently this, towards the end, is going to have this, as it says here, heart-lifting and heart-wrenching book. But I think when the back doesn't really give you any idea of the book and you go inside, the author wants you to feel a certain type of way about her characters and is not going to allow you to feel any differently about them. And so, we'll see. I understand it's supposed to be emotional and that sort of thing, but there is a way to allow your readers to feel the emotions of these characters without trying to force emotion, which is what this felt like. Charlie got further than I did with her reading and DNF'd it, so we'll see. I might return it to the library unread because I wasn't particularly interested in this one anyway. I have to say, I am saving Great Circle the Book of Form and Emptiness, Salt Lick, and The Bread the Devil Need until after I've got through the library books because I own them. So it just seems like the more suitable way to do things. And also I'm hoping that I'm saving the best for last, if that makes sense. Although nothing has yet matched the sentence. Even The Island of Missing Trees that I particularly enjoyed has not yet topped that book. I have ideas about which book I'm hoping will be at the top, but obviously I've got to read them first, which I can't do if I'm chatting to you. So I am going to go now. I've had a rather nice jaunt around Goit Valley with my sister and the dogs this morning, then came home and all my brother's dogs were outside, and he's got one who, when he was a pup, always came right into my legs. I constantly had green shins from where he was jumping up at me and having a fuss, but he's been a bit wary of me since he's come to live here, and today I was determined that I was going to make him my friend, and so there was about an hour dedicated to making this dog friendly with me. And before he left, he was having fusses and climbing over me, and what can I say? I don't like the idea of a dog disliking me, and so I'll do anything within my power to make it my friend. It's just who I am as a human being. And that's all I'm going to say about that. If you've read any of these books and would like to discuss them, then please feel free to do so in the comments. I hope that you have enjoyed this video, and until next time, that is all.